when it comes to asking what you want. The second step is, what do they need to show up as their best? When it comes to negotiating and asking for what you want, what do they need to show up as their best? We so often forget this because we think about what we want, and we kind of I just talked about in the previous segment, we were just talking about with the comments too. We kind of stop there and it's like, oh, okay, well, I got what I needed. All right, whatever. Okay. I need to get what I want. Well, there's other parts in the equation, and it doesn't have to do necessarily in an altruistic, or you should think about other people or the golden rule. It's nothing highfalutin, even nothing ethical about it per se. Even though I love talking about ethics and mores, I think they're important to our society. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is those non-negotiables you have, and even the nice to haves that you have. Are they going to impede this other party, this organization, this partnership, these other folks from showing up as their best? What I mean by that is, if you say, if we work together, I need to get 95% of the cover price of whatever I sell. Would that mean that the organization or distributor that you're working with, whether it's music or I deal a lot with publishing and books and other things, would that make them go out of business? Sure, you can get 95% of the cover price. Let's take it back to the Michael Jackson era, back when I was a kid. And it's like, okay, the album costs $10, or the book costs $10. Remember that? That was a long time ago. This costs $10. Okay, the artist wants 95% of the cover price. Okay. So how are we going to pay for the paper? How are we going to pay for the wax? I'm a vinyl guy. So how are we going to pay for the wax? How are we going to distribute it? How are we going to get to the stores? How are we going to pay for the manufacturing plants that are going to create? Like, once you understand the big picture of how business works, then maybe that 95% of the cover price and demanding that, and that being your non-negotiable, maybe it doesn't make any sense because it's going to bankrupt Epic Records, or it's going to bankrupt, Penguin Random House. I can go on all day. Like, it's going to bankrupt those. It's not going to work. It's not sustainable. Now, of course, you don't want the other end where you're getting 1% of the cover price. You're getting a dime for every for every $10 album or book sold. I've seen people with those deals. You don't want those deals. What you want, though, is something that actually allows the other party to succeed. If you're taking all the resources and demanding all the resources, then not only are you sabotaging the success of the other party, but you're also sabotaging the amount and success, whatever metric you use, that you're going to get. If I came in, and again, I've had independent books for a while, and I've negotiated with the bigger publishers, I was already a best-selling author. If I had certain demands on my table, and I'm wise enough to have an agent, so shout out to my agent, you know, excuse me and my agent are in there and saying, okay, well, we're going to get 50% of the cover price, unless you're, what's his name, James Patterson or someone. But even a James Patterson deal, if you're familiar with the famous author who writes thrillers, even James Patterson takes on, he has a whole company and he takes on some of the advertising. Look it up. Fascinating enterprise. So it's really a business partnership. Like, he already has a business. He has a whole function thing. He's not an individual author or someone like myself who has a small publishing company. He has, I think he's in Texas. He has a warehouse in Texas and full-time employees and all these things. He really is a publishing company in himself. So even when he's saying, I want 50% of the cover price, which I believe was his deal that he made 15 years ago, when he's doing that, he's saying, but to do that, I'm actually going to take some of the pressure off. I'll pay for the advertising in the New York Times and, the, the full page ad. I'll do some of that. So even the case of the big dogs, including MJ, to a lesser extent, including Prince, And I've done some videos about both of them. Feel free to go to bringingworth.tv and check it out. In fact, I have a Prince video on the front page right now that I did about a year ago. But if you go to bringingworth.tv, you'll see it on the front page. You can check it out. But in studying these masters, no pun intended as far as the masters, in studying these masters, it's like even they, as uncompromising as they were, knew how the business worked. So if you're negotiating, you have to understand how the business actually works of the people that you're negotiating with for a few different reasons. Number one, again, if you do the wrong move and ask for too much, you're going to sabotage them. Like they're going to give it to you anyway. But if they did, they'd be out of business. But number two, which people don't think about, if you don't understand the business that you're negotiating in, and the other person that you're talking with obviously knows the business because they're business, you're going to reflect how ignorant you are. Not as a personal attack, just it just is. So if you want a record deal and you go to, I don't know, Universal Music Group or one of those guys, and you say, "Oh, okay, I'm the hottest thing on the street. I'm really high on the Spotify playlist, and I've sold X amount of CDs out of or USB, things out of my trunk." Da da da. They're like, "Great, we're happy to give you a deal." You're like, "Great, I want 75% of every album sold." They're gonna be like, "You don't understand the math at all. You should go. We'll get someone else." Or worse than that, they'll set up the contract in a way where it makes it seem like ego-wise that you're getting a better deal, but they're actually hurting you on the back end. We can get to a whole discussion about that. I've seen people come in there with the belief that I need to get everything that's on the table, including the things that I want. If I don't do that, then I'm going to walk. And one of two things happens. Either people are like, bye, or they'll say, sure, you can get whatever you want. And then ends up being more like the equivalent of a figurehead or something that's an empty promise that doesn't mean anything. It's the equivalent of which I've seen kind of negotiations where folks are like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and co-author this book, but my name needs to be first on the cover. Uh, okay, but then on the back end, the other authors that are involved, or even the publishing company, is actually making more on the royalties. But they're so worried about having their name bigger. So there's a level of ignorance that you're going to have to overcome. So when you're asking for things, particularly in the business world, then you got to know the ropes. And greed isn't going to get you there. Trying to say, I'm going to go ahead and get everything that I can out of this, and I'm going to suck the blood out of this, which we'll talk about in a second, it's not going to get you there. So whatever you're doing, is it going to hurt the business or really hurt the business of the people that you're negotiating with? Will the people hold ill will against you, which we'll talk about in a second? Remember, you still got to work with these folks. And lastly, and I was just talking to someone about this recently, how can you help them shine brighter? How can you help them shine brighter? So there's a way that, in many cases, where you can get what you want and even get what you need across the board as much as possible. Let's say, I won't say across the board, as much as possible. But by you getting what you need and even what you want, then you're able to level up. If you're getting a $50,000 advance for some work that you're doing, and you say, you know what, I really need 75. But if I do 75, then that means that I'll have less financial pressure. I'll have a longer runway. I talk about runway at bringingworth.tv if you don't know what that means. Excuse me, but basically the amount of money how long the money you currently have will sustain you, your family, and your business. That's called runway. And if I get the 75,000, then I'm able to show up more presently because I won't be worried about where I'm going to get this extra 25K from. You see how that works? So it's not just saying, give me 25,000 more, or give me 50% more on this advance. It's also saying these are the benefits for all of us. If I'm doing this work, don't you want me to be fully engaged, or do you want me to worry about money? You don't have to put it that blunt, but I guess it depends on the negotiation. But that's basically what you're saying. You're showing the advantages of them, and you're also showing that you know what's important to them. So that same exercise we talked about in the beginning, where their need to haves, their non-negotiables, their wants, and the ones they don't care about. Trying to do that analysis on the other parties involved. It helps a lot, and it will allow you to show up in a certain way that's better, and it's not just about me, 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 me. Great book on this. Highly recommended. 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Hope you're doing well, Mr. Greene. Fantastic book. It talks about the different ways that essentially how human nature works. And some of the stuff in there is heavy, some of the stuff in there is dark, and I'd say all the stuff in there, understanding it is essential. 48 basic laws about how people operate. This is a universal thing. I love, love, love the storytelling. It's by Robert Greene. Behind the scenes, Ryan Holiday was involved. Shout out to Ryan Holiday. You might know him from Daily Stoic. I've talked about that book many times over the last few years. And the amount of research and resources and storytelling going from Greek mythology to here in the United States with P.T. Barnum a century and a half ago, going all the way to, excuse me, some of the stuff that Tesla, the real Tesla, Nikola, not the car company, the real Tesla, 2 centuries ago was dealing with overseas, and some of that drama that came over here, to issues with Napoleon when he was in France, da 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 da. These beautiful stories talking about how people were able to negotiate and discuss things to their gain, and sometimes in the gain of everyone that was involved. The wit and the wisdom that comes from people, real people in most cases, aside from mythology, real people that were able to figure out things and to understand how to get their needs met, no matter how harsh the environment. Really important part. Continuing this conversation is awkward conversations and how to master them, how to be smarter about them. There's actually an early episode, I believe it was a live episode from probably about 3 years ago. So shortly after the channel launch, we get much deeper into this. And yeah, so please go and check out that episode as well if you want to go deeper. And getting centered before an interaction. Yes. Thank you for the comment. So getting centered before an interaction. So that means knowing what your worth is, wink, wink, understanding the worth of the other party. You understanding the dynamics, power dynamics, the resource dynamics, the needs of the parties involved. That's not a bad thing. Again, going back to the 48 laws of power, that's not a bad thing. If I'm a first time author and I'm talking with Penguin Random House, right? If if I'm executive producer and creator of a show that has 18,000 subscribers, and there's a new startup that wants to do advertisement with it, those are two very different power dynamics. And there's nothing wrong with talking about power. I think when I was younger, I felt like there was something wrong with it, but as a lot of us have, but it's not. Those are the particular dynamics. That's what matters. What do I really, really, really want for myself out of this meeting? What do I really, really want for the other person out of this meeting? And the first one has nothing to do with material. The first one has nothing to do with you. Lovely. I'm glad you paraphrased. I appreciate that. And if I really wanted these things, how would I show up? Bottom line, I appreciate the comments. Thank you. Gold comments. So in this case, whatever you're asking for, that list of non-negotiables, or it might just be one non-negotiable, but no more than three. What do you think the non-negotiables are for the other party? What are those things that are that can't be changed, that can't be negotiated? They just are. And then that sets up those boundaries that allows you to show up. In your negotiations, have there been times where you realized that you weren't thinking about the other party? And how did you rectify it? Was it too late? I'd love to hear in the comments. Let me know. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here at Bring It Worth TV, episode 408 that you're watching right now. I'm here live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. So subscribe on your favorite platform. The home mothership. I still haven't come up with a term with it. Maybe you guys have a term you can come up with it. The main channel, we'll call it, and Bring It Worth TV. You can also check it out. You can also check it out on Twitch, older episodes on Spotify, and wherever you get your channels. But let me know, how are you guys dealing with those partnerships? And when did you realize that your ask didn't really include another person? I'd love to hear.